Okay, so please take note that the content of this PowerPoint slide, it also came in your module in online class. So I'm just only summarizing the important topics to be discussed, and the rest of the content of your module is your self-paced learning. Okay? So our learning objectives here is to define what is an individual taxpayer, to identify the classification of individual taxpayer, or taxpayers rather, and also to distinguish the resident citizen and resident alien as the classification of individual taxpayer and its classifications or sub-classifications. So what is the individual taxpayers? So individual taxpayers, it's about us. It's a natural person, okay? It is a natural person, or these are the natural persons who has income derived within the territorial jurisdiction of the taxing authority. So from the word itself, natural person, it talks about us as individuals for whatever the income that we have, or for whatever source of income that we have, okay, here in the Philippines and abroad, that is subject to tax, and it was regulated by our Philippine tax law. The territorial jurisdiction, it's about the Philippine tax law on how the income of those individual taxpayers must be subject to our Philippine tax based on the classification of the taxpayers. Okay? Remember, in our week 2 topic, we discussed about the inherent limitations that our Philippine tax law is subject to territorial jurisdiction, whether the BIR, where the BIR is going to tax the income of those classification of taxpayers or not. Okay, so we have the classification of taxpayers. So the classification, it composed of two, which is the citizens and the aliens. And for each, this classification has the following sub-classifications. Okay, so what is a citizen? According to our Philippine Constitution, under the Article 4, Section 1, or the Article 3, a citizen can be defined as a person who lived and born on the particular state. But in the Philippine Constitution, because we talk about Philippines, a Filipino citizen is a person who has adopt the 1987 Constitution. It talks about the citizens of the Philippines, okay, who adopt the current Constitution, which is the 1987. Okay, so that's you. If the Filipinos adopt that, then you can be considered as a Filipino citizen. The second one, if a Filipino citizen is born with a father and a mother, or born with a father or a mother who is a Filipino citizen. So it means if you are born in the Philippines and your mother and father is a Filipino, if only your father or only your mother is a Filipino, while their partners are foreign, for as long as you are a Filipino blood and you are born here and you reside here, you are to be called a Filipino citizens. A Filipino citizen is also born, for those Filipino who born before January 17 of 1973, please take note that their Filipino mother to be elected to be a Filipino citizenship at the time of the age of majority or reaching the age of the majority. So it means that those Filipino who are born before 1973 and adopt and their Filipino mothers are elected to be Filipino citizenship, then those childs are also and family are to be also considered as a Filipino citizen for as long as the Filipino mother reaches the age of majority, which is the legal age of 18 years old. And a Filipino citizen also, a person who acquires a citizenship after birth or shall be called naturalized in accordance with the Philippine law. So it means if you have a Filipino blood but you are not born here in the Philippines but you are born in other country and you want to acquire a Philippine citizenship and the Philippine law or the Philippine government grants you that, then you are to be called a Filipino citizen in a naturalized way. Okay? So, as an example, in the United States of America, Filipinos are residing there to acquire citizenship. So, if the U.S. government give them a grant for the American citizenship, then they are to be called as naturalized Filipinos, American citizen. So here in the Philippines, it's just the same like Americans. Because that's the first one. If you have a Filipino blood, but you are not born here in the Philippines, but you are a citizen of other country, then you can acquire that naturalized. The second one, the foreigner, if say foreigner, there's no Filipino blood, but they want to acquire Philippine citizenship in the Philippines. But if the Philippine government granted the foreigner, then they will become a naturalized Philippine citizen or Filipino citizen. Because naturally born and a naturalized citizen is different. Okay? Another is the dual citizenship. It's about the RA, Republic Act of 19225, or this is the oath of allegiance to the Philippine Republic. What is a dual citizenship? A dual citizenship is for the Filipino citizens who are born in the Philippines but they grew up in other countries. And if they want to retain their Filipino citizenship, they have to file for this oath of allegiance, okay, to the Philippine government. But if you are in the other country, there is also a Philippine embassy or Philippine consulate that you're going to process those papers to file for the oath of allegiance in order to first to reactivate or to maintain your Filipino citizenship. So it means you have a two citizenship, which is a Filipino, and of course the naturalized citizen, which the foreign country you belong. Okay. So that is the dual citizen. And please take note, this dual citizenship is only applied for the naturally born Filipino citizen who reside and become a naturalized citizen of the foreign country and they want to retain their Philippine citizenship. Okay? So that's the first one. So the second one is the alien. Okay? So the alien, these are the foreigners. These are the foreign-born individuals who are not entitled and qualified to acquire a Filipino citizenship by birth or after birth. So when we say Filipino foreign-born, there's no Filipino blood, no? Because not all foreigners can acquire Philippine citizenship based on the standards of the Philippine government. So if there are foreigners who are staying here in the Philippines, but they are not qualified or they are not entitled to acquire a naturalized Filipino citizenship, then they are to be called as aliens. Okay? So aliens, citizens has also two classifications. Okay? So the first one, this is the sub-classification of a citizen. So the first one is a Filipino, a resident citizen rather. A resident citizen, this is a Filipino citizen who are born in the Philippines and stayed permanently in the Philippines. And resident citizen, these are the Filipino born, and they are also stay outside the Philippines with less than 180 days, 83 days, or less than 6 months during the taxable year. So if a Filipino citizen or lives the Philippines for a while, but they will not take too long, or they are only to go outside in the Philippines for less than 6 months, then they are to be called as resident citizen. But take note, under our Philippine tax regulation or tax law, if the taxpayer is a resident citizen, for whatever income he or she have within the Philippines and outside the Philippines or abroad, that is subject to Philippine tax. Okay, so if it is subject to Philippine tax, therefore, their income in the Philippines and outside the Philippines are subject to Philippine tax or income taxable or taxable income. Example of that is Manny Pacquiao. Okay, Manny Pacquiao is a resident citizen. Of course, he is a professional boxer. He earns an income as a boxer in the US. Because Manny Pacquiao is a resident citizen, then the income that he have in the United States as a boxer, and also they have also other incomes in the Philippines aside from boxing. So income from the US and the Philippines is subject to Philippine tax. Okay, so it must be declared. As an example is Manny Pacquiao. Another type of a resident citizen, a citizen rather, is a non-resident citizen. A non-resident citizen, this is a Filipino citizen which they stay outside the Philippines or they go outside the Philippines for more than 183 days or more than 6 months during the taxable year. What are those reasons why other Filipino citizens are residing abroad or they go outside the Philippines? Okay, they leave the Philippines during the taxable year to be an immigrant. So once they become an immigrant of that other country and they stayed for more than 6 months, they are to be called a non-resident citizen. The opposite Filipino workers or OFW, because they have also an employment contract for 2 to 3 years. So they go outside the Philippines for more than 6 months, then they are to be called as non-resident citizen. And for the seafarers, okay, for the seafarers, of course, they're traveling a lot of places, and they stayed in the ship for 7 to 8 months. Then they stay outside the Philippines for more than 6 months. Then they are to be called as non-resident citizen. Okay. Okay, so that is a non-resident citizen. And please take note, okay, that this is another situation. The question is, sir, what if a Filipino citizen, a resident citizen rather, okay, example of this, what if, sir, the taxable year, or during the taxable year from January to December of 2021, let's say, sir, I stay here in the Philippines from January to June of 2021. Then month of July, I go outside the Philippines to reside abroad and to stay for a living or for a common good. So if during the taxable year, this is the note, okay, the note here. So there will be a change of status of your citizenship. So if you stayed for January up to June of 2021 here in the Philippines, you're to be called as resident citizen. But at the time that you go outside the Philippines from the month, let's say July of 2021, you left the country, and today is October, so it's more than 3 months. So you are still to be called as a resident citizen. But if you stay for too long, because example, you want to stay for good in the other country, so you're now exceeding 6 months outside the Philippines, then you are to be called as non-resident citizen. So that's a change of status. Another situation, another situation is if you are a non-resident citizen. Okay, if you are a non-resident citizen and then you want to go back in the Philippines and stay for good, so the ruling here is once the non-resident citizen is going back to the Philippines, the effectivity of the change of status is upon the arrival of the non-resident citizen in the country. Let's say, today is October. It was during the taxable year. Let's say the taxable year is 2021. From January to September, excuse me, from January to September, you are a non-resident citizen. Let's say you are in Canada. And then October 15th, this is the date of your arrival in the Philippines because you decided to come back in the Philippines and stay for good. And that's also the change of status. Okay? So, from during the taxable year of 2021, from January to September, you are a non-resident citizen. From October to December of 2021, you are now a resident citizen. Okay? So that's the rules. So if you're going to change your status from non-resident citizen to a citizen, it will take effect upon the arrival here in the Philippines. From the date of arrival or upon the arrival in the Philippines. But if you are a resident citizen and you're going to change your status to a non-resident citizen, now you need to stay outside the Philippines for more than 6 months. So if you're more than 6 months outside the Philippines, then your status will be changed from resident citizen to a non-resident citizen. Okay? So that is the status. Okay? Because please take note that the non-resident citizen under the Section 23B of the National Internal Revenue Code, that the non-resident citizen, for whatever income of the non-resident citizen in the Philippines, is subject to Philippine tax. Take note, only income in the Philippines, okay, is subject to Philippine tax. If the non-resident citizen has an income in other country, okay, then the income of the foreign country is not subject to Philippine tax. Okay, so take note, only the income of the non-resident citizen in the Philippines is subject to Philippine tax. So look at the illustration here. This is what I'm telling you, the change of status. Juan de la Cruz is a naturally born citizen. Now, he grew up in the Philippines, but his family, okay, migrated in Australia for 25 years ago. And then, Juan de la Cruz decided to return and reside permanently in the Philippines of March 1 of 2017. So the question is, what is the classification of Juan de la Cruz as a taxpayer during the taxable year of 2017? So that will be a change of status. Okay? So what is the change of status of the classification of Juan de la Cruz as a taxpayer? So take note, as the rule that I gave to you, from January to February of 2017, Juan de la Cruz is classified as a non-resident citizen. But at the time of his arrival, March 1 of 2017, so now Juan de la Cruz are change of status from non-resident citizen to resident citizen from March to December of 2017. Okay, so those are the classification of citizens. And now let us proceed to the classification of aliens. So what are those classification of aliens? So we have the resident alien, okay? So this is under the section 22F of the National Internal Revenue Code. So the resident alien, these are the foreigners who are not the citizen of the Philippines, okay? But these are the foreigners who are residing within the Philippines. And take note, excuse me, and take note, they are staying in the Philippines for more than 1 year from the date of their arrival. And they are not here in the Philippines as sojourners or transients. We say transients or sojourners, they are tourists. Okay? They are tourists. So they are not here as a tourist. They stayed here in the Philippines for too long, for more than a year, for a reason. And make sure that whoever foreigners who come in the Philippines for a reason, especially they have their mission to accomplish, and they stayed here for more than a year, then they are to be called as resident alien, because this foreigner lives in the Philippines with no definite intention, or with no definite intention of his stay in the Philippines. It means that anytime if they want to go back to their country, then they will go back. Okay? So those are the resident aliens. Okay? Please take note also, and as I've said, as an example, let's say foreign students. If the foreign students, let's say Indian national, they go to the Philippines to study on a 4-year course. So they will stay here in the Philippines for more than 4 years. Okay? So therefore, if the student stayed for more than 4 years, then he or she is to be called as a resident alien. Is not a citizen of the Philippines because he or she is an Indian national. So they are to be called a resident alien. Okay? Especially if the foreign student, aside from studying, they use also to work here. Okay? Another one, if someone is here in the Philippines to work for something and stayed for too long, a foreigner, then they can be also to be called as resident alien because the purpose of stay is work. And take note, the resident alien, for whatever the income here in the Philippines of the resident aliens, that is only subject to Philippine tax. Another type of alien is a non-resident alien. Okay? The non-resident alien, of course, these are the foreign individuals who are not a citizen of the Philippines. But take note, they are not staying in the Philippines for more than 6 months. The non-resident aliens they are only here in the Philippines for a short period of time. Just like a transients or sojourners or a tourist or a missionaries. Okay? They only come from the Philippines for definite purpose for a short period of time. Let's say a foreigner or let's say an artist will go to the Philippines for a concert. Example, BTS. BTS visit the Philippines for a 2-day concert. So that is a non-resident alien. BTS is a non-resident alien in the Philippines. Okay? So take note that non-resident alien has also its classifications. And what are those classifications of a non-resident alien? First, non-resident alien engage in trade in business. Okay. The non-resident alien engage in trade and business. They stayed in the Philippines for an aggregate period of more than 180 days or 6 months during the taxable year. So it means this non-resident alien engaged in trade and business, they have to stay here for 6 months to manage their business, and then they go back to the country, and after a few months, they have to go back here again to visit the business. Okay, it's more than 6 months. And take note, these are the aliens who have business income in the Philippines. Is that possible, sir, that the non-resident alien can establish your business in the Philippines? Of course. Okay? And of course, he has a business partner. The other one is the non-resident alien not engaged in trade and business. So the non-resident alien not engaged in trade and business, they stayed in the Philippines for only, 6 months or 180 days or less than 6 months. And take note, these aliens, or these non-resident aliens who do not have business income in the Philippines because they only stay here as a tourist. They are here for a short period of time to attend a seminar. And they are staying here to be a speaker of something. They are here to do a work for a project base which cannot which cannot spend for more than a year. Okay, so this kind of status is a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business, and therefore the non-resident alien, regardless if they are engaged in trade and business or not engaged in trade and business, only their income in the Philippines is subject to Philippine tax. Okay? So let's have here an illustrative exercises. So I gave the illustrative exercises in order to classify a particular taxpayer. So let's proceed to the number one. Okay, let's say Andre Joe is an American basketball player. He was invited in the PBA and signed a 3-year contract to be the import of a team which is Ginebra. Okay? So if he signs a 3-year contract with the PBA, then they will stay here for 3 years. And that's the purpose of why he is staying here in the Philippines. So how can you classify Andre Joe as the taxpayer during the taxable year? Of course, you can classify Andre Joe as a resident alien. Because based on the classification, that resident alien, those are the foreigners who are not Filipino citizens who stayed here in the Philippines of more than 1 year from the date of arrival, and they came here for a purpose to accomplish or a mission to be accomplished, and that's to be an import for 3 years. Okay? Okay, the next one is Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran, of course, we all know that Ed Sheeran is a British singer and a songwriter. Take note, let's say Ed Sheeran is going to the Philippines, okay? And they conduct a concert for 3 days and promote his new album. He stay here in the Philippines for 3 days for a concert and to promote the album. So he will stay here for 3 days. So how can you classify Ed Sheeran as a taxpayer during the taxable year? So you can classify Ed Sheeran as a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business. There's a question here, sir. Why do you classify Ed Sheeran as a non-resident alien not engaged in business, but concert is a business? Wait, wait. The income of Ed Sheeran is not a business income. That is a professional income as a singer. Okay? So it means he came here for a concert for 3 days and he only get the proceeds for 3 days after the concert in the Philippines. So that's not the business. That is a profession as a singer. So that is a profession income of Ed Sheeran. So they're not to be considered engaging trade or business here. They only stay for a concert for a short period. So Ed Sheeran is considered a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business. The third one is Angelina Jolie. Okay? Let's say Angelina Jolie captivated by the beauty of the Philippines, particularly in Palawan. That's why Angelina Jolie, she visits the Philippines once a year for 7 days. Okay? And then, because he was amazed in Palawan, she invested a share of stock in the domestic corporation in the Philippines, and she earns a dividend income. So the question here is, what is the classification of Angelina Jolie as a taxpayer for the taxable year? So how can you classify Angelina Jolie? He was classified as still a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business. So it means why? The question is why Angelina Jolie is a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business, because he's not conducting a business in the Philippines, but only investing stocks. And the dividend income that she earned is a passive income and not a business income. So therefore, she is a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business. The last one is Lion Woods. Okay? Lion Woods is an American professional golfer and a resident of California, United States. Okay? But Lion Woods invested a business in the Philippines, and he also the owner of of the fine dining restaurants in the Philippines, especially located in Bonifacio Global City. So please take note, he's an American golfer and Lion Woods has the business, a fine dining restaurant, and investment in the Philippines. So the question is, what is the classification of Lion Woods as a taxpayer for the taxable year? So the answer that Lion Woods is a non-resident alien engaged in trade or business. Well, of course, based on the illustration, he owns a fine dining restaurant, so he operates a fine dining restaurant here in the Philippines. So that is the business income of Lion Woods. So therefore, he is considered a non-resident alien engaged in trade or business. Okay, so let us discuss now the ordinary taxpayers and special taxpayers. Because from the classification of taxpayers, we have also to classify or to categorize who are the ordinary taxpayers and who are the special taxpayers. Okay? The ordinary taxpayers, okay, are those taxpayers who are a resident citizen, a non-resident citizen, resident alien, and also the non-resident aliens engaged in trade or business in the Philippines. So why is it they are ordinary taxpayers? Because those ordinary taxpayers are subject to normal tax and final tax. We were going to discuss that on the second part next meeting. What is the normal tax and the final tax? So these are the ordinary taxpayers. While the special taxpayers, these are also the non-resident aliens not engaged in trade or business in the Philippines, and they are also a special alien and Filipino employees are those who are holding a managerial and technical position in the regional area headquarters or a branch established in the Philippines by a multinational company, and also this company does not earn income from the Philippines. Okay, and also act as a supervisory, communications, and coordinating center for its affiliates, subsidiaries, or branches in the Asia-Pacific region and other foreign markets. So what are those special taxpayers? Because it means that those are the taxpayers that subject to special tax. They have a separate special tax to be filed on it, and we will tackle it later on in the corporate income tax. Another, if the special alien and Filipino employees holding a managerial and technical position in the regional operating headquarters. Okay, so for as long as the regional operating headquarters are engaged in the following services, like general administration and planning, business planning and coordination, sourcing of raw materials, corporate finance advisory services, research and development services, technical support and maintenance, data processing and communication, and also business development. And of course, another special tax are also the offshore banking unit. So the offshore banking unit, these are the foreign bank corporation, and it is this foreign bank corporation or the offshore banking unit are authorized here in the Philippines to engage a business transaction in the Philippines. And another is the foreign petroleum service contractor and subcontractor. So those are subject to final tax. That's why the gasoline has the following special tax on gasoline aside from the excise tax. So those are the special taxpayers. And to summarize, or take notes, and to summarize our topic for today, when it comes to the income subject to tax and classification of taxpayers, please take note that if the taxpayer is a resident citizen, their income within and outside the Philippines is subject to Philippine tax. While the rest, non-resident citizen, resident alien, non-resident alien, and regardless if they are engaged in trade or business or not engaged in trade or business, only income in the Philippines is subject to Philippine tax. So that will be our discussion for today with regards to the first part of the tax on individual.